And then I wanted to just kick off by introducing myself. So my name is Alex Olivares. I am the Audience Research and Evaluation Specialist for the Mint Museum. So what that means is that I manage the museum's research agenda, keep staff informed on current trends, on museums and visitorship. I design and conduct program evaluations. So whether that's on a program or an exhibition, and then that knowledge helps us grow as an institution. I also do manage our college programming, which is why we're here today. I'm really excited to be at the Mint. I've been at the Mint now for 8 years. And in that time, I did finish a master's in public administration where I focused on evaluation and art administration at UNCC. And I also have a bachelor's in anthropology. So with that quick introduction, I also wanted to let everybody know that our chat function is open for everybody to share your questions for our panelists as we move through our virtual tour, and Julia introduces herself. So let's get that going. All right, so let's meet our panelists. Thank you, Julia, so much for being online with me. Would you please share with us your name and why you wanted to work in a museum, your college and program name, any past jobs, internships, titles, and those main duties, and then your current job title and your main duties?
Sure thing, thank you. So hello, everybody. I'm Julia Kraft. I am currently the Assistant Registrar here at the Mint Museum, but just to give you a background about myself, first of all, why do I work in museums? So ever since I was little, I've really loved the thought of just stuff, of things, and why they are important to us, whether that's through an anthropology collection or an art collection. I've just always been fascinated with how people categorize and put emphasis and importance on stuff. So that is kind of what got me into the field from the get-go. And so to start, I went to the University of Florida. I studied anthropology, art history, and leadership there. And then I later on in my career, not directly after college, but a few years later, pursued a master's in museum studies through Johns Hopkins with a focus in collections management and sort of exhibition logistics as well. So work experience wise, in my last year of college, I did a thesis and internship combination at the Harn Museum in Gainesville. And that was sort of related to visitor services at first, which was an interesting foot in the door, so very forward facing. And that was just an internship, just a few months. So after college, my first real museum job was at the High Museum in Atlanta in their development department. So I worked for the wine auction, which is their largest fundraiser. It was an entry-level position, and it was very interesting because it was specific to one event. And obviously, I'm sure, hopefully most of you have heard of the High. It's a very large institution with a great reputation. Their fundraisers are very well established. So it's very focused within the development world. So that was really great, but also an eye-opening experience for me because, as I mentioned, I'm very much like a hands-on, wanting to be behind-the-scenes person. So development is a little different. It takes a very special and wonderful person and personality to accomplish. So I always praise all the development people in the museum world, but it wasn't for me. So I decided to figure out what did I want to do? I wanted to be more hands-on with the artwork and with exhibition planning. So from there, that's when I decided to pursue my master's and concurrently moved to Augusta, Georgia, and worked at the Morris Museum. So small Southern art collection, which was a really awesome experience as well because it was a much smaller institution. So got to wear a lot of hats there. And kind of my position was titled curatorial assistant and sort of morphed into a registration position at some point. So it had a lot to do with exhibitions and also permanent collection management. So that really got my feet wet with hands-on with the artwork. So concurrently worked on my master's and worked at the Morris. And then from there, an opportunity actually with my husband's job brought us to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I, at that point, was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do there. So I took a position with the Tennessee Aquarium, which was really interesting because it was in their human resources department. So at this point, I was just trying to figure out where I fit in the nonprofit world. And that's kind of where I landed. And also volunteered at the Hunter Museum of American Art, which is a fabulous institution right on the bluff in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So volunteered, was really persistent and annoying, I'm sure. And they finally offered me a position there. So I worked concurrently at both places for a little while, which was super fun because I got to spend one day like hanging out with penguins, and then the next day I'd go, work on an exhibition, which was really, really fun. So worked at both of those places in Chattanooga. And then again, another move for my husband's job brought us to Minneapolis. So I did a little bit of searching there. But by the time we decided we didn't want to really stay in Minneapolis long term because we're from Florida and Minneapolis is freezing, I decided I was going to just look everywhere. And I found this position open at the Mint, applied, and lucky me, I was chosen. So here I am. And I currently am the assistant registrar. We have 4 registrars within our department. So our chief registrar and then 3 other registrars like myself. And we all kind of share similar responsibilities, but have focus areas. I would say my job now is very heavily exhibition driven. So I manage the back end of how an exhibition is built. So from the curatorial, from their initial list of objects, I then pursue loan agreements and all sorts of, basically all the moving parts that get an exhibition brought to a place. So that includes shipping and insurance and all the fun, exciting things that go into that. My job also includes permanent collections care. So we acquire a good amount of objects every year, which is really a lot of work, because if you think about how many objects come in, we have to take measurements, take photographs, make sure that they arrive without any damage, and just taking care of those collections in the best way possible. So that's a big portion of the job. We also work on climate control and building specifications for specific objects. So if it needs a specific kind of storage or humidity level, so we work on those kinds of things. Sorry, am I still here? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. My computer went black for a second, so sorry about that. Yes, and then we also do a lot of database management. So our collection, we have roughly 35,000 objects. We track and manage everything from its location to condition to images and such in a large database. And then another kind of layer to things is emergency management. So actually yesterday we were testing the smoke evacuation system at Uptown. So there's a lot of planning that goes into making sure a collection stays in its best state possible. So that's kind of an overview of what I do now and kind of how I got there. So
thank you so much for sharing, Julia. I had no idea you had moved so much.
Yes, we have. And, I really have enjoyed every move. It's been really awesome to see different institutions at different levels of, very small places to very large places, and just how the intricacies of how every institution is really, truly different. So it's been great.
Yeah, that is a common theme I hear often from a lot of museum professionals. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's get this tour going. I'm going to share my screen with everybody and we'll get this tour going.
Hello, I'm Julia Kraft and I'm here in mezzanine storage at our Mint Museum Uptown location. I'm just going to kind of give you a little behind the scenes tour of what goes on in art storage. To describe where we're at, this is a space that's what we call the receiving area. So when an object is brought into the collection, we usually have it arrive here, unpack it safely, and assess it for its condition. Make sure that everything has been okay in transit and that the object has is exactly what we're expecting. From there, there's a lot of paperwork involved as far as, if it's a loan, there's a loan agreement, and if it's a permanent collection object, it's a gift or maybe a purchase. There's a lot of legwork that goes on before the object actually gets here. And that's a bigger part of the job than you think, actually. The hands-on portion, which is, of course, my favorite, is not a huge part of the job, but it's the most exciting part, I think. So anyways, yeah, this is where we receive objects, and then what will happen is they'll be assessed for their condition, and we'll go at length to make sure that they're all right. And from there, we will assign each object a number. So the number corresponds to each individual object. There's no number in our 36,000 objects that is the same, which is kind of a fun fact and kind of crazy to think about. And loan objects have L in front of them. Permanent collections, for the most part, start with the year and then are differentiated by a string of numbers after the year that includes something like a batch, and then if an object has specific parts, like a T set, for instance, it would have .1A or 1B and so forth, which kind of differentiates each object from the others in the collection. So from here we can kind of walk around if you'd like and see what else there is to see in storage. So one of the most important tasks as a registrar is keeping track of objects, and that is everything from its condition to its location. So for instance, this shelf here is kind of a receiving shelf, and when the objects come into the collection or come off of view, we have a system of tracking every object's movement. And as I mentioned before, with thousands of objects, it's very important to keep track of the location of everything from the minute you move it, because when we do exhibition changes, lots of objects move from storage to the galleries and vice versa, so you really want to be careful and keep track of everything. And for instance, each shelf is labeled with usually some sort of letter or number combination. And from there, we use a collections management software called EMU that actually tracks each object as a record with an image and information about its acquisition, so how it came into the collection. And then from there, its location, if it has high resolution images, there's notes about that. And really any information you could possibly need should be in EMU to find from curators, from the director to registrars as we track objects. Another important factor in registration is taking care of the objects physically. So each object is usually made of some sort of artistic medium, whether it's paint on canvas or ceramic or silver, for instance. And I happen to have some silver objects on this shelf right here. And they're currently wrapped up in this fabric because silver is a material that's very sensitive to humidity. So the moisture in the air is it can be damaging, and especially when objects are hundreds of years old, we want to make sure we preserve them for the future. So that's another major aspect of the registration world, is preserving objects and keeping them in a pristine environment that is specific to each material. So as I said, silver's usually susceptible to moisture, so we try to keep them wrapped up. There are other objects and types of things that are susceptible to humidity, so we keep the humidity in the building at a specific range as well as the temperature. So we have a general range where we keep everything, and then if anything has any specific requirements, we then will, put them into fabric or into special barriers that protect it from any other elements. So we're going to explore another area of storage behind this door. And just another fun fact is everything is very secure, and our name badges actually are registered every time we open a door to make sure that all collections are cared for properly. So back this way, we have some more objects to explore. And this is a fun section of dresses. So these are actually part of a larger object. And when I say object, I mean that this is an actual installation. So we accessioned this work as one piece, but it's technically over 700 dresses, which is a really fun fact. And we currently have this on display in New Days, New Works, but the installation as it stands is not all of the dresses. It's actually a little over half. So the rest of the dresses are still here in storage. So these dresses are actually not part of the installation on view, but the installation itself can morph with the space that it's installed in. So our curator kind of gets the creative choice to display certain dresses in a certain way, and as you can see in the exhibition, that's what we have on display there. But next year, this work is actually going to travel to another museum, and they will have a different iteration of the installation. So each dress, like I said, is very carefully kept in the storage space, and I'm actually wearing these purple nitrile gloves that are protecting all of the objects from the oils and moisture in my hands. So each dress is hung on a special hanger to make sure that it doesn't fall or get damaged, and we've been trying to make sure that the bottom stays dust free and that each garment is taken care of in the best way possible. So here we are in another area of art storage at Uptown. And fun fact, we have several storage areas in both buildings. In fact, there's a specific fashion storage over at Randolph, and also a room dedicated entirely to shoes, which is really fun. But here we have our 2D art storage. So this is mostly paintings, works on paper, photographs, and such. So this is one of our painting and 2D storage racks. And here I'd just like to talk about how artwork moves, which is kind of an interesting aspect of the job. Artwork you have to really think through the movement of an object before you do anything. So before a painting goes out into the galleries, we have a very specific process of planning who's going to be there, how many people do we need, does it have the correct hardware that's going to hold up its weight on the wall, and then is there a place to put it once we get there, because we never let any artwork touch the floor or anything along those lines. So we have a very specific track of how an object moves from storage to exhibition space. So as you can see, the museum world is so exciting, and my job as a registrar contributing to that world is awesome. From day to day, I do different tasks, from sitting at a computer and altering loan agreements to taking a painting off the wall and giving it an inspection before it goes out on loan. The variety of the work is inspiring and so much fun, and there are lots of details, but at the same time, that's what makes me thrive as a registrar. So thank you for joining me on this storage tour.
Thank you, Julia, for taking us around the MMU storage area. That's such a special treat and such a curious area that everybody wants to know what it looks like and what it's like. And so really appreciate that. And so, as I mentioned before, our chat box is open for anybody to pose Julia any kind of question that they might have. But if they don't, I will kick us off. So Julia, tell us, you kind of alluded already, what did you do at work yesterday?
Yes, okay, so the first half of the day was the smoke evacuation management. So I was basically walking around the fourth floor of Mint Museum Uptown while the fire department and the city were on site managing these giant fans. The building itself, there's actually a museum tower above Uptown, so it's like apartment buildings above that, but regardless, these giant fans bring the air out of the building, and we currently happen to have some works on paper that aren't framed up on the walls. So with all that movement of air, we had to make sure keep eyes on everything, make sure it was fine during the test. So we did that. And then, let's see, yesterday afternoon, we had a lovely volunteer here who's actually going to help us with figuring out how to hang a textile. So she's going to help us work through that project, which will go out in early December in the craft design and fashion wing at Uptown when we rotate that.
Very neat.
Yeah.
So thanks for explaining what you did yesterday. It sounded like a really busy day. A question actually just came in. SB, they are fascinated with your career. what advice would you give a young person contemplating a similar career as yours today?
Sure, absolutely. So I think you guys can tell from my introduction that I've done a lot of things in the nonprofit world. And I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I give anyone who wants to end up in this boat is you really should just be open-minded and ready to try anything. And especially these positions are hard to come by, so just be prepared to try to work your way into them. So you may need to take a position in a department you never even considered, or intern for a while, or if there's no positions available at an institution, which has happened to me several times with how many times we've moved, just be persistent. Reach out to anyone you can find or think of that may know somebody who knows somebody. I can't tell you how many times networking has truly come through for me. So make friends even in the virtual world. Use LinkedIn. Try to find connections where you can. And then, just be persistent and positive and ready to, be the man who can do the job.
Yeah, Julia, thanks for sharing that. I think you made some really excellent points. I think being open and flexible is really important, especially as you're starting off your career, you're looking into different kind of jobs. I think that allows you to have more opportunities in a way because you're looking for different things, and then LinkedIn for sure, networking, building, all of that, so important.
Absolutely.
So another question came in. They say, I noticed some empty shelves behind in the storage areas. What happens when you reach storage capacity?
That is a great question, and hopefully I don't have to actually answer that. So at the moment, we're anticipating some large gifts in the next year or two. So we're currently working through a plan. And basically what we have to do is get really creative, and obviously keeping object integrity as our first goal. We just have to think through, it's kind of like a giant game of Jenga, or not Jenga, Tetris, I mean, because basically we have to just be really efficient with our space, especially at places like Uptown where, we do have a limited storage capacity. So the first step being make everything as efficient as possible, but also knowing that we may end up having to do offsite storage or some other opportunity if need be in the future. So so it just depends on the day and on what gift comes in. So we make it work.
Okay, so another question came in. Does the Southern culture impact the museum choices on how and what to exhibit?
That's a very interesting question, and a little beyond my scope of my job. So I would say that's definitely a curatorial question. So basically, and I think this was one of the questions that you had for me, Alex, down the line, was that, like, what do people always mistake your job for, or what do they think you do, basically? So a lot of people usually think, since I work at a museum, that I'm a curator, or that I have a say in what exhibitions come in, and I don't. And I'm very much a black and white box type of person. I help with loan agreements and paperwork and all of the back end. That is a very extensive job, but not a curatorial choice. So that would be our curatorial department. We have a chief curator, and then she's got a great team below her that each have specialties, whether it's American collection or craft, fashion, and design, and they make those choices. So it really just depends on the curators and kind of what their goal is for the coming years. I think they do use our mission statement and our kind of area of focus. We are an international museum of design and artwork as well. So I think they use those terms and those ideas to guide what they choose. But that's beyond my scope. So that's kind of all I'll say about that.
No, I think you answered that beautifully. I do believe some students and some people I come across do think that we're all curators in a museum, and there's so much more that it takes to actually manage a museum, to put programming out, to put exhibitions out. So really, really well answered. And yes, the idea of misconceptions in terms of our jobs and duties. Yeah, that's a good question. I think so too. So what is your number one tip for writing a resume?
Okay, so resumes are tough because you want to try to stand out, but you also want to follow the rules. So I think being clear and concise, and also keeping it to one page is also very important. It's super hard. Mine is currently not one page, but you really need to be specific about what you're saying and also tailor it to the job you're applying for. Do not send blanket resumes to everyone that's exactly the same. So if you're applying for a job that's in registration or a job that's in visitor services, they're totally different jobs, right? So they're going to want to see different skill sets. So I think really, look at the job you're applying for and try to make your resume clearly and concisely state why you're the candidate for the job.
That's some great advice. Okay, so here's another question for you. What was your favorite course in graduate school?
Okay. Man, my graduate program was just the best. So I'll count this as a course, but we had to finish the program with a seminar, which was, mine happened to be in London, which was amazing. And so I got the opportunity to go to London and see behind the scenes at most of the major institutions over there. And then we had kind of a project at the end of the seminar that we had a presentation and worked together to complete. So I know it's not really a class, but it was definitely curriculum. And the seminar was it just depends on who all was at your seminar. So I think we had around 15 people total, and everyone had different specialties. So we were kind of thrown together and had really open choice to decide like what our final project was going to be. So I loved that class, and obviously the hands-on experience was just amazing and irreplaceable. So I loved it.
So at that point, did you know kind of the details of what a registrar does in a museum, or is that kind of where you learned?
Yes, so that my program was, I think it was 10 courses total, and I took a couple of classes that were specifically about museum registration. So believe it or not, I have a few books over here that are just like dedicated specifically to like forms and all that kind of like nitty-gritty detail stuff. So, and I just like apparently I thrive in that. So that I think it was a collections management course that I took that kind of opened the door, plus my previous job experiences, that I knew where I wanted to be, and then I just kind of had to hone in on the skill set to get there.
So another question came in asking if the registrar department ever take interns or volunteers.
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, we do. But I do know, I think Alex, maybe actually you would have a better answer for that, because I think there's a little bit of restructuring going on at the Mint about how that's going to be in the future. So yes, we do, but I will kind of defer to you on how that works.
Yes. So right now we are currently on a pause from our internship program, just because of everything going on in the world with COVID-19. We just thought it would be safer to not do internship program interns on site. And so we are hoping to relaunch our internship program summer 2021, hopefully kind of a little bit more structured. And in terms of the registrar department, I know that they have taken interns and have worked with volunteers before. So if someone's interested in learning a little bit more or having a little bit of that experience, that the Mint would be a great choice for that, hopefully in the coming year. Awesome. So Julia, what's the best career advice that you've ever received?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. let's see. I've had a lot of really great mentors over the years. So I'm trying to think. I mean, it kind of plays into a little bit of what I said earlier, but basically just being a positive presence has really helped me throughout the years, you know, because every institution is going to have, you know, pitfalls or things that hang everybody up. And so even if you feel like there's no solution for this specific problem, I think trying to just be a goal-oriented person with a positive mindset is just like the biggest piece of sage wisdom that really has been imparted on me, because I've worked with lots of wonderful people in the past, but then I've also worked with people who, if there's a negative mindset in the room, it detracts from any productivity. So I think just, you know, keep in the light. That's kind of the biggest thing I've tried to do in my career. And then also I think that I've learned from other wonderful people I've worked with.
I really appreciate that. Thanks. Someone says they love the clock on your wall.
That's so good. So this right here. Yeah. So that's actually, that's a fun story actually. So that is from my time at the Hunter Museum, and it is actually by two of my coworkers. They made this as a going away present for me. They're both artists in their own right, and they actually took an old security camera that they found in the museum and took a cast of the front of it, and then made it into this awesome little wall art that I've got. And on it, I don't know if you can see from there, but my two dogs are on it. So Bo and Rosie are here in the office with me.
Wow, that's so creative.
It was such a great gift.
Okay, so last question for you. What is either the hardest or most boring part of your job? Kind of the minutia, the little hard thing.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm just being honest with you guys, this is really hard for me. I'm definitely a behind the scenes kind of person. So I'll shout out to my sister here. So all day have been like, Jasmine, this is happening and I've got to be live on camera. And, you know, so this is definitely out of my comfort zone, which is good. I'm glad I'm doing it. But public speaking is not my strong suit. So luckily in the registration world, that doesn't really come up super often unless you're, you know, at a conference or, you know, panel. So I'd say that, although rare, is probably my least favorite. And then let's see. So as far as small details, we do a lot of data management. So sometimes, whether it's a spreadsheet or the database, some things can get monotonous, and you know, you try all the tips and tricks you can, but sometimes it's just like straight up data entry, and it can be like soothing to get some of it done, but then there's a point where it gets a little repetitive. But overall, I really do love almost every aspect of my job.
So cool. Well, those are all the questions I have for you. In case anybody else wants to throw in a last minute question, please feel free to do so. If not, I just want to say thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Julia, for the behind the scenes tour. That was really awesome. And I'll paste right here a link to our website. If anybody didn't catch the first career chat we did, I spoke with 3 other of our colleagues, and they shared their experience in the museum field. So please feel free to check that out. And then again, everybody, wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us.
Sounds great. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.